So at least you seem to concur with me that the government itself is socialist, okay? Because we have a rule of law and all people are treated equally under the rule of law, okay? So you agree with me that parts of the government are socialist. Anything that's run by the government is socialist. The police, the fire department, education, the court system, all that, the military, you name it, anything run by the government is socialist. And you seem to think that some amount of government is necessary, all right, for, as you put it, the rule of law, that without some basic security, capitalism is impossible. It's impossible to trade and exchange goods if people could simply steal them, all right? So there needs to be some basis for capitalism to function, that it needs a proper economic environment in order for it to function, okay? And that's what I've been arguing all along, that the policies that I promote that you would say are socialist, such as health care and regulations and things like that, create a more stable environment in order for capitalism to function well, all right? Investments in the infrastructure that enable businesses, that provide a conducive environment for businesses to grow, for the economy to thrive. Things like education, providing people with education allows a smarter workforce as a whole, provides a much better environment for the economy, okay? And all the claims of socialism and everything else, yeah, it is socialist to an extent, but, the idea that the free market is going to solve all of these things, we know it doesn't. We know there's no free market in terms of police force. We know there's no free market in terms of rule of law, okay? There are things that we know there's no possible market, and there are instances where we know the free market just does not work as well as something that would be managed by a government that would be looking out for the public interest. Now, the government has got its own set of problems in trying to deal with things, which is precisely why we don't want to socialize everything or have central planning. There are lots of problems. I think, for example, having private housing, having private goods, things that can be mass-produced and sold to individuals where there are very few externalities. Who cares what pair of shoes you buy? Maybe, there are some externalities there, but certainly not as many as things like healthcare. The fire department, there was a time when all the fire departments were privatized, and they decided to socialize them, to nationalize them, because what the fire department would do, you'd had a whole bunch of them, and they would only respond to fires for the people who were covered under their plans. So it's kind of like fire insurance. You would pay a fire department to put out your house if it ever caught on fire. And they go to fires, and they drive by if they didn't happen to be purchasing, the fire coverage from that particular fire department. And the problem with that, of course, is that, once you let a house burn to the ground, the fire spreads, and suddenly you've got multiple houses burning to the ground. You could lose a whole city that way, all right? I feel the same way about healthcare, that there's enough public risk in terms of bankruptcy, in terms of a lot of things, that we really need to find some way to mitigate the risk that people have when they get sick, all right? That it has a real negative effect on the economy when people start dropping out and going bankrupt because they can't afford their medical bills. It has a very negative effect on the economy. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but it's like 50% of bankruptcies are due to people who can't afford to pay their medical bills because they're uninsured and they suffer some kind of calamity. All right, so in terms of socialism, there are times when the market works well, and there are times when, frankly, the market does not work well. And for health insurance, the market does not work well at all. Going off a little tangent, the reason why there will always be socialism and inclinations towards socialism is because people are social animals. That is, when you look at doctors, a doctor cannot ethically refuse medical treatment to someone who is in need of medical treatment. Okay, it is the same as holding a gun to their head. If someone is dying from a sickness, a doctor cannot ethically refuse treatment to that person. And it's ingrained into their instincts. They instinctually cannot refuse service to people who can't afford it. That's why medicine has become socialized, whether we like it or not. It's because the doctors ethically can't turn patients away because they can't afford treatment. All right, that's just the way it is. All right, and people have this ingrained compassion, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, the way that the conservatives try to make it out to be, that, look, they're perverting the whole system. Well, no, if you ask me, it's capitalism that's a perversion, that people are meant to be social creatures, and capitalism tries to impose a penalty for having any sense of social consciousness or altruism at all. Okay, so to me, capitalism by itself is a perversion of the human psyche. All right, and corporations are, for all intents and purposes, if you were to psychoanalyze a corporate quote-unquote person, you would find them to be a sociopath, not caring about the welfare of other human beings at all. Okay, so capitalism is a perversion. All right, pure capitalism is a perversion. Pure socialism is a perversion, because people aren't meant to be completely altruistic and not care about their own well-being. But there are bounds and there are limits, and there are instincts that we have evolved with that have made us social creatures. And we have to have some amount of respect for that. And we have to realize that we can't change human behavior. All right? We can form a government and a system that utilizes human behavior and gives us the desired outcome. Okay? And not only are people greedy, and that's the capitalist mantra, that people are just selfish, completely selfish. But people do have a social conscience, and they do care about others, and they are altruistic within certain bounds. Okay, that is another part of human nature that capitalism wishes to completely ignore at their own detriment. All right, so you can't change human nature. We have to form a system that better utilizes it. All right, that's all I'm going to say for now. Thanks.